Hi, today we're going to learn about how to simplify roots. So the first idea that we need to know when we try to simplify roots is the idea of the principal root. And normally when we take the square root of something, for example, if we have x squared equals 4, we take the square root of both sides and we consider the positive or negative square root of the number underneath the radical. So in this case, we'd have x equals plus or minus 2 as our answer. However, in the principal root, when the square root is already in the problem to begin with, we only consider the positive solution. So that's the principal root. If the radical is already in the problem to begin with, we only consider the positive answer. So this being said, we can now learn how to reduce these roots. So as we can see here, the square root of 4 is 2. We all knew that. And how did we get that? Well, we are taking the square root of 2 times 2. And when we have this radical, we are trying to find two copies of something, the same thing, within this root. And then we can move it outside of the radical, as we can see here. So if we do the same thing of the cubic root of 8, we see that the cubic root of 8 is equal to the cubic root of 2 times 2 times 2. So as we want to find 3 of the same thing within this radical, we find that we have 3 of the same thing. In this case, it's a 2. So we can take these 3 2's and move them outside of the radical. Likewise, if we have 16 underneath a fourth root, we can consider the fourth root of 2 times 2 times 2 times 2. And as we can see here, we want to find the radical specifies that we need to find 4 copies of the same thing to be able to move it outside of the radical. And as we can see here, 1, 2, 3, 4, that's 4 copies of the same thing. So we can move 2 outside the radical. Here's where things get weird. If we have the cubic root of 256, y to the fourth, x squared, this isn't exactly the short and sweet example that we saw earlier. So what do we do to solve this? Well, we can take a look at each part of this term and then figure it out from there. So this statement right here is the same as saying 2 to the 8th times y to the third times y, just split up this exponent here, times x squared. And well, we know that 2 to the 8th is 2 to the third times 2 to the third times 2 squared times y to the third times y, copying down the information that we figured out earlier, all under our radical. So where do we see groups of 3? So well, we see a group of 3 right here, we see a group of 3 right here, and we see a group of 3 right here. So we can move all of these parts outside of the radical. So we have 2 times 2 times y, and once we move them out, they remove this exponent of the third here, times our radical, so the cubic root of 2 squared y x squared. So basically everything that we have left over that we can't group up to get 3 of. So now we know 2 squared is 4, so, and 2 times 2 is also 4, so we know that our final answer is 4y times the cubic root of 4y x squared. And so that is our final answer.